Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm looking to have some fun in the Great League Fantasy Cup by hard countering dragon types with my shiny RIBOMBEE. RIBOMBEE is a fairy and bug type Pokemon with the moveset of Fairy Wind, Bug Buzz, and Dazzling Gleam. So unfortunately, it's stuck with only nuke moves. But that bug fairy typing does mean that it's a wall to the standard Flygon moveset of Dragon Claw and Scorching Sands. So, while RIBOMBEE is not a Pokemon I would recommend using for climbing, today I'm going to use it anyway to see if we can make some dragon types sad. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in the first match we've got a tough lead Turtonator into Azumarill. I throw one Incinerate and save switch into the Skarmory. The Skarmory is to attempt to bait out any potential steel types that my opponent may have lurking in the back, because of course RIBOMBEE can do absolutely nothing against any steels. They're staying in with the Azumarill, which works out amazingly for me. I'm going to fire off the Sky Attack, and they are going to let that through. Continuing to farm with the Skarmory, building up to the Brave Bird, and baiting with the Sky Attack, hoping my opponent will respect it with a shield, and they do. That is quite good for me. Again, I'm going to let this through, because an Ice Beam will not be enough to knock out. Now the question will be, can I make another move? Opponent says no, they send in a Haxorus, but Haxorus is about to get walled by RIBOMBEE. Breaking Swipe and Earthquake are both going to be resisted here. I'm farming up quite a bit of energy. They can go for another Breaking Swipe. That's very okay by me. We've seen I can survive it, but they're on Surf. Disaster strikes. The opponent running the PB Poke recommended moveset on the Haxorus, and just like that, I lose almost my entire RIBOMBEE. This is absolutely awful. In comes the Azumarill. I'm forced to bring in Turtonator, and I think my win con is just to try and Incinerate down. To make it easier, I'm going to get one extra Steel Wing with the Skarmory. That wasn't a catch attempt, they didn't have the move. I'm just trying to make this farm down as easy as I possibly can. And I'm going to let it through. It is just going to be the Ice Beam, and in the back, it's what I thought, it's Skarmory. I can go for the Overheat, force the shield, but even debuffed, this next Overheat is going to inflict massive damage onto the Skarmory. Overheat gets them low. Opponent is going to be able to make a move. I specifically no-shielded the Ice Beam there, anticipating that it could be the Skarmory back, because of course a Brave Bird would do more than an Ice Beam. Opponent will concede the match. We move to game number 2, Turtonator versus Togedemaru. What an unbelievably good lead. Opponent is going to throw one and then save switch into Azumarill. I have a pretty nice response available with Skarmory, but the awkward thing is that if the opponent wants to try and force switch advantage, they have the ability to do so. That's part of what makes Azumarill very deadly in this format. I decided to let this go. Even if it is Hydro, I can survive it. It is going to be another Ice Beam Azu, so they're actually not running Hydro Pump, which is a pretty big surprise. I decided to commit the shield, because after all, I had such good alignment on lead that I really don't think that I can afford to give this up. So I will go for the Sky Attack. Opponent will commit the shield with the Azumarill. Opponent makes another move, and I have a choice to make. I don't think I can afford to give up switch and win the game. So I'm going to shield, and I'm just going to Steel Wing all the way down. So I've won switch, but at a significant cost. I gave up both my shields, and the opponent still has a shield available for their Backmon. And RIBOMBEE, as we saw in that first battle, is absurdly glassy. It cannot take a hit whatsoever. The Brave Bird will connect. I bring in Turtonator. In the back is Goodra, and this actually looks winnable. Goodra, its Dragon Breath is going to be double resisted. It can land an Aqua Tail, but I can tank one. I'm farming up with RIBOMBEE. Opponent tries to get to the back-to-back, but I make the Bug Buzz. This is only neutral, but RIBOMBEE is all attack, picking up the KO. And back in comes Togedemaru. Togedemaru needs the Wild Charge to pick up the KO. I think Wild Charge will allow me to KO in one Incinerate here. They live on 1 HP. Oh no. If they can somehow make a third Wild Charge, this game could be a loss, but they do not get there. Thank goodness we're able to take the win. We pick up a pretty decent lead in the next match, Turtonator versus Empoleon. Empoleon is going to switch out into Giratina, and this is a problem Pokemon for this team. Now you might be wondering, why didn't I bring in my Fairy type? And that's because RIBOMBEE actually loses all evens to Giratina, because Giratina just has a pacing advantage, and RIBOMBEE only has nuke moves. So I send in the Skarmory, and with Skarmory, I'm going to be able to force both shields or switch advantage from my opponent. And this actually ends up working out pretty decently for me, because as long as I'm able to get shields down, Turtonator is very deadly. Opponent actually lets that go. That's great for me. They do get some farm with the Empoleon, but I can bring back in the Turtonator, and Hydro Cannon will only hit for a neutral. So my opponent will fire off the Hydro Cannon. That does a decent amount of damage. I'm farming up. They send in their final Pokemon, and they're running ABA Water. It's Azumarill in the back. They baited out the Skarmory, and now my Ribombee is in serious trouble. Opponent goes for a Hydro Pump there. And to be fair, people are not going to know Ribombee and its lack of bulk. As we see that Dazzling Gleam connect, absolutely smacking that Azumarill. Oh my goodness. Now I can just go for the Bug Buzz bait. I go for a slight undercharge there because I want to leave them alive. I need to farm them down so I can outpace here. But the switch clock is up, and I'm going to lose because their switch timer just came up. That undercharge was the perfect play to win the game if they couldn't switch out of the Azu. If I get the farm down with the Turtonator, I win, but their switch clock just came up to save the Azu. So unfortunately, we lose by the narrowest of margins. We see a pretty nice lead in the next match. Turtonator versus Excadrill, the safe switch into Wheezing from the opponent, and this is fine. I can tank whatever they throw here. It doesn't matter what moveset they're running. They go for the Sludge, and I'm just going to full send an Overheat. If they shield, I can just bring in Skarmory, shield once, and Steel Wing down. And if they let it go, then once they bring in their third, which is Goodra, I'm going to pivot out into the Skarmory. Skarmory does have a winning matchup here versus the Goodra, but that's an even shield, and I have no desire to shield the Skarmory. My goal now is just to continually burn the clock, so that way, eventually, I'm going to be able to have my switch clock back up, and I can put the Turtonator back on the Excadrill. They're not going to let me get to this second Sky Attack, so I'm just going to let it go, fully wait the timer, and then once I bring in Ribombee, it should be only a couple seconds before I can switch out again. So I bring in Ribombee, they're going to switch out into the Excadrill, and unfortunately for them, they had to throw most of their energy at that Skarmory, so I can fire off the Bug Buzz. That still almost one-shots as a resisted move. The damage output this thing has is hilarious. And with the defense drop, that's going to KO. And from here, there's just no hope for the opponent. They have to shield the Dragon Pulse. Even the Incinerates are adding up. After seeing Ribombee, they just don't want to play anymore, and they're just going to let that through. We get the dream lead in the next match, Turtonator versus Alolan Sandslash. They're going to switch out into Azumarill. And again, Azumarill's safe switch is very, very annoying for this team to deal with. Like, I have Skarmory, but Azumarill up energy has quite a bit of play here, and I really, really need to keep switch advantage. They're going to farm up a massive amount of energy. I'm going to let this go, calling they don't have the Hydro Pump, but there it is. The Hydro Pump connects, and that means that my opponent can now double shield, bubble all the way down, and win switch advantage, which is not good news for me. Opponent is going to be able to make it to another charge attack. I decided that I want shields down. Shields down should work better for me, so I'm going to be able to make it to the Sky Attack, and at the very least, force their final shield from them. So the Sky Attack will be shielded, and now it's all going to be up to Turtonator to try and sweep this game. I think because my poor Ribombee can't really do anything against the Sandslash, I'm just going to bring in Ribombee here. Ribombee is going to be hit with a Hydro Pump. I switch in the Turtonator, and I snipe with Incinerate. In the back, it's Azu 2.0. It's the Tapu Fini, and this is really bad. I'm forced to overheat to do any meaningful damage here, and unfortunately, they're going to be able to apply a lot of pressure with Surfs. I can only throw one more Incinerate here. So I am just going to go for one more Incinerate, but the good news here is this means I'm only 2 Incinerates off my move. So I should be able to, I think, make it to a move versus the Sandslash, but due to the one Shadow Claw they did at the start of the game, they're actually able to outpace. A beautiful play by my opponent at the beginning to store a little bit of residual energy, and that play wins them that game off a nightmare lead. We've got an amazing lead in the next match, leading the Turtonator into Dedenne. Although last time I had a really good lead, I actually lost, so we're going to try and actually win this one. They're going to go for the player off. That does a lot of damage. I'm going to farm up and go for the Overheat. If they shield, I'm forced to switch out, and honestly, I think I'm sending in Skarmory. My goal here is if they're leading Dedenne, surely that is going to be their main source of resistance to flying damage. So if I can double shield the Skarmory and just farm down, then I have a lot of energy, and Skarmory's energy can go very, very far in this meta. So I'm going to double shield. They send in Azumarill, and with Azumarill, I'm just going to start chucking Brave Birds at it. Brave Bird does a ton of damage. I really want to put the pressure on my opponent to throw their energy quickly. They do not, and that's going to allow me to make it to another Brave Bird. This just KOs if they let it through, and they do. They fully throw it away, because in the back, they have Lucario. It's Force Palm Lucario. The Force Palms are not enough to KO the Turtonator before I make the Overheat. Overheat is going to get the shield. The issue here is I don't think Ribombee survives a Shadow Ball. The Force Palms are going to be double resisted, which is great due to the Fairy Bug typing, but let's see the Shadow Ball damage here. Shadow Ball, oh my goodness, Ribombee, can it make it to a move? It cannot. And now, if the opponent is running Thunder Punch, I lose. This has to be a pup. It's a pup. I'm going to be able to farm down and exit with the move loaded for the Dedenne. Oh my goodness, Ribombee. I would love if Ribombee got a cheaper move. I believe it learns Lunge in the main series. Lunge would be an awesome addition, so that way it could actually get the charge attacks. We see a terrible lead in the next match. Turtonator into Giratina. I save switch into Skarmory, and we are not off to a good start in this game. Opponent will fire off the Shadow Ball. That does a ton of damage, and they're going to send out Shadow Steelix. I haven't seen much Steelix in this meta, but it's a really big problem because it's a very effective answer to my Skarmory safe switch. And unfortunately, 2 Brave Birds plus a Steel Wings do not KO. So my opponent knows this. They know they can no shield farm all the way down. I can't really afford them going for an Earthquake versus the Turtonator, so I'm forced to just bring in the Ribombee. They're going to go for a Crunch followed by a Psychic Fangs. And I just really have to hope that somehow, against all odds, I can win this game. But realistically, there's no way that I can win it at this point. The Giratina is just too good into my team. In the back is Azumarill. I'm just going to save us all time and resign the match. All right, we move to the next game. Turtonator versus Escavalier. Okay, amazing lead. We are in a great spot here. They save switch Azumarill again, man. I would have really enjoyed seeing this meta if potentially Azumarill was banned, because my goodness, this bunny rabbit is everywhere. So I will go for the Sky Attack, and I do win the zeros with a Sky Attack followed by a Brave Bird. 2 Sky Attacks typically won't KO. They are going to connect with the Hydro Pump, and that does a lot of damage. This does mean that they can now control switch advantage, but as long as they get shields down, I should be able to do pretty okay. Because Escavalier is very, very glassy. So Escavalier, I bet if I chuck a Bug Buzz or Dazzling Gleam at it, it's going to hurt quite a bit. They're going to go for the player up, and now I'm going to send in Ribombee. They pivot out into Empoleon. Oh my goodness. So they're core broken by the Turtonator lead. The uncomfortable thing for me here is the bait game. Do I full send the Overheat and risk them shielding, or do I bait? I'm going to bait with the Dragon Pulse. I'm predicting they are shielding this. So I go for the Dragon Pulse. They call it, and they survive with fractional HP. And this is suddenly not good. So now they're in a position where they can bring in the Azumarill. I can force a shield with the Dragon Pulse, but Azumarill should be able to make a move versus the Turtonator. So they will commit the shield. Azumarill is going to make the move, as I just cannot get that farm down. And it's a Hydro Pump. That's going to KO. I need Ribombee to clutch here for me. If they have Aerial Ace, I think that I just lose. I will be firing off the Bug Buzz. My hope is that it's Acid Spray Drill Run. Look at the Bug Buzz damage, by the way. Oh my goodness. It all comes down to this. Is it a Mega Horn? Is it an Aerial Ace? No, it's a Drill Run. That's resisted, and Ribombee actually clutching an endgame. Let's go. Bug Buzz picks up the KO, farming down the Azumarill, and taking the win. We now move to the next morning, and what do you know? Turtonator in a tough spot versus Azumarill. I save switch into Skarmory. Opponent responds with a Shadow Empoleon, and I'm very surprised to see this here. Here, I'm going to make a pretty big mistake. What I should have done was kept farming and thrown when they got the back-to-back moves. Because here, unfortunately, my opponent can actually make back-to-back Hydros and survive the Brave Bird. I incorrectly assumed that Brave Bird would be threatening enough that I could force a shield, but it was not. And now I'm definitely on the back foot where I need Ribombee to try and clutch a game that it has no business clutching. Oh well, we're going for the Overheat, and then it's Ribombee time. So I will bring in Ribombee, farming up with the Azu. In the back, it's Giratina. I only see one win con, and that's the opponent having no idea what Ribombee has. Dazzling Gleam, one-hit KO. Wait, is this doable? Can Ribombee clutch this? There's no way. There's absolutely no way, but I'm going to try. I'm gonna try. Ribombee at this point, I'm just going straight Bug Buzz. My biggest issue right now is the bubble damage. I have a very high rank Ribombee, but the issue for me is that I'm still just taking too much damage from these bubbles. I shield up, they are on play rough, and unfortunately, I think this is just gonna be game over for me, as they're going to be able to get a farm down. I'm forced to switch out and force them to throw their energy, and now it all comes down to, can I survive the bubbles? But it looks like I'm too low. In comes Ribombee. I get close to the Bug Buzz, but just not close enough. Hopping into the final match, Turtonator versus Lucario. Is it Force Palm? It is not. It's counter. They save switch into a Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff now just going to get hit with the overheat. I don't find Wigglytuff to be particularly good in this meta personally. There's just a lot of steel absolutely everywhere. And I know there's some dragons out and about, but I really find that Wigglytuff is just a extremely inflexible fairy type. So while it's extremely good in open, I just really don't see the use for it in this particular meta. I get a full farm down with the Skarmory. I'm debuffed, but my energy is going to go far into just about everything. In comes Azumarill, and you know what? I'm going to start launching Brave Birds at it. So I will go for the Brave Bird. In comes Lucario. I make it to another Brave Bird. Skarmory putting the team on his back here. The Brave Bird does get shielded. Clock just not up to save it. But now, look at these Incinerates right here. In comes the Turtonator. They're going to try and pup their way through it. I'm just going to let this go. They can go for the pup. That's fine by me. And I can just bring in Ribombee. Ribombee farming up. At this point, I'm worried because I had lost count of Lucario's energy, so I commit the shield, and I end up shielding a pup, which is a feels bad moment. This, I'm sure, can only be a pup. There's no way it's anything but a pup, so I'm going to let that through. Although, to be honest, this damage is adding up with enough power-up punches. Even double resisted counters start to look scary. So I pick up the KO with the Bug Buzz, and now it's Dazzling Gleam time. XL Azumarill is monstrously bulky, but Ribombee connects with the Dazzling Gleam. And from here, I can get the full Fairy Wind farm down. Shiny Ribombee flexing on him as we're able to take that win. All in all, I didn't end up finding as many dragon types with the Ribombee as I hoped, but I did have some fun sets along the way. I believe across the sets that I played with it, I went 7 and 8. As I mentioned at the start, Ribombee's a Pokemon in dire need of a moveset update. A cheaper move, or a cheaper coverage move at that, would go a long way towards helping it out, because currently it's just so frail and so expensive to get to its charge moves that it's going to struggle in most situations. So the fact that I went 7 and 8, as I mentioned at the start, I don't recommend this as a climbing team, was in large part just due to the fact that Turtonator Skarmory core is insanely good at the moment. That core really feels like it covers each other's weaknesses nearly perfectly, and that really put me in positions where Ribombee could succeed, because oftentimes Ribombee just needs a massive type advantage or a massive shield advantage at that. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.